I never thought I'd find myself living in homelessness when I was asked to work for the Washington State Environmental Justice Task Force. At an early age, my parents both instilled this appreciation of the environment in me, but they both lived very different lives. Both of them lived about same income levels, but my mom is from Germany. She grew up in the Black Forest, trees all around, and my dad grew up in the pre-EPA South Bronx, so very different lifestyles. When we moved to Washington State, I was lucky because I had the privilege to work on social justice and environmental justice issues and environmental science with my father. He was in Washington State actually helping with Superfund sites, cleaning them up, talking about environmental hazardous waste, but also talking to people about the environment. I got to work with him at a very young age, around like 7 years old. And at this time, this was around this time, I think I decided that I wanted to go to school to become a marine biologist. I really enjoyed, though, talking to people and talking to people about how we interact with our environments and what that looks like. When I was in college, though, I quickly understood that I was very different than a lot of the other marine biologists. I realized that I wasn't necessarily denied a place at the table, but there was never I was the only Black woman in my class all the way throughout to my senior year of college. And this led to a lot of my environmental justice work. The work that I did as a child and the work that I did with my father in the community, the work where I talked to people and learned about people and their experiences within nature. And I connected that to a lot of the marine biology that I did in school. Now, fast forward to after college. When I was done with school, I moved in with my mom because her mental health issues started to increase a lot. Her struggles grew to a point where it was impossible to talk to her about it. And she went untreated for quite a while. And unfortunately, her paranoia grew. Our relationship was really strained. And the strain became more as I started to do more environmental justice work, because I wanted to explore our relationship as I'm her Black daughter and she's my white mother. And what does that look like? And the more I started to understand things about restorative justice and systems of oppression, it actually split our relationship further. The fracture in our relationship, it actually culminated to her having a psychotic break that led to her evicting me and taking the only assets that I had. And this led to me being homeless. And this was on the eve of me getting some of the most important news of my life. And this news was when I was asked to be a part of the Washington State Environmental Justice Task Force. This task force is a group of individuals, a lot of folks that were appointed by the governor who work within different departments in state government, but there were 3 open community positions. And so I got to work on the task force as a representative of the Tacoma Urban League, meaning that in my position, I was representing the Black community of Washington State. The strain on my relationship with my mom actually impacted the relationship that I had with certain allies in the environmental justice movement. I was really honored to serve on the task force because it was a huge turning point in my career. And it was the first time that I felt that people were appreciating that the science that I had to bring, but also were recognizing my connection with my neighbors. I was given the opportunity to finally use the connections I had with the community and also just my passion for environmentalism to better my home. And it felt that my science was finally having a purpose because I got into it because I wanted to better the world and I wanted to better my community. I also, though, again, quickly realized how difficult engagement is when there's so many barriers of entry. I realized that I was experiencing a lot of the same trauma that I was actually trying to prevent my community from suffering as well. So the outcomes of the EJ task force process, the document that we will complete by the end of this year, it became even more real for me. Hearing people's struggles to make it just to public comment periods because of things like childcare work or transportation, hearing folks talk about how it's really hard to keep their fridges stocked and not having the ability to pay rent were also everyday concerns of mine. Even having a job, living in Washington State, specifically in the South Puget Sound area, the cost of housing was absolutely high, and it still is. Justice work also, what folks tend to not understand, even if you're in a position of privilege, it's very demanding and it's really emotionally exhausting, just from things like compassion fatigue for others, but especially a lot of folks who do start to work in environmental justice spaces, a lot of them are people who are also from the communities that they're trying to serve. And so I thought to myself, how could I help my community or my state when I was really in a position where I couldn't help myself? And again, what I realized is like, there are many people who had the same exact story as me, but this was my opportunity to share mine. And sharing my story with people, not just in the community, but also having the platform of being on the state level and talking to policymakers face to face, sharing my story with people has been one of the most important things that I've ever done with my work. I realized that I was in a position where I could actually build trust where bureaucrats have failed before. I don't just share these stories with my community, but we share the same zip code. And that means so much. That means so much for the people that we're doing this work for. I realized that my sphere of influence among my neighbors and fellow activists had a sort of power that I think goes unrecognized a lot, and the type of power that has actually moved people to their environmental decision-making that they do on a day-to-day basis. It's people power. It's the power to impact lives in a very intentional way through local engagement. And it's incredible in a way that sometimes global engagement doesn't work. It's like caring for your family, and more likely than not, what impacts your neighbor it's going to impact you too. What I really found to be the solution for a lot of the issues that I had was the strength and the beauty that I found in true allyship, whether that was meals, or a shower to wash in, or a place for me to sleep, or a friend giving me dog toys so that my dog had something to play with and didn't have to think about what was going on, or even just folks helping me with the security deposit on my apartment. My allies used their privilege and their power to care for me in my darkest hour. And that repaired my relationship with just the concept of allyship. It also extended my empathy to think about the fact that we are all very different people, but at the end of the day, all people have needs. And I still live in the same neighborhood that I serve, but now I have more of an opportunity to thrive. I have a roof over my head. I have a fridge full of food. And it took for those strong and trusting allies for me to reach the place that I'm in now. The mentors that I had came in all ages, all experience levels, all different industries. I was helped by many folks from 500 Women Scientists. I was helped by artists in the community. I was helped by people who, I've known since I was a child who own a small business around the corner. And yes, this was people of several different races, different backgrounds, and different ethnicities. Since then, I do have a job that pays me an equitable wage and it keeps a roof over my head. But that's only because my community was there for me. And so right now in my life, it's my job to be there for them. Thank you.